Hello and welcome to another Sonya Maya psychology video. Today I want to talk about 3 ways to make a female orgasm a lot more powerful. And the last thing I say, you might not expect this one because I don't really talk about it and I haven't really talked about it. So make sure you watch until the end. And if you like this kind of content about relationships, psychology, and sex, ask the Clitician content. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, turn on bell notifications. I'm posting videos every Sunday. Did you guys know that women take longer to have an orgasm with partnered sex versus masturbation? There was a study that recruited over 2,300 women, and the latency time for partnered sex was 14 minutes. And the women climaxed a lot quicker when they had sex on their own. We're talking about 8 minutes. So we're talking about 8 minutes versus 14 minutes in terms of masturbation versus partnered sex. It seems that the main reason for this is the lack of proper clitoral stimulation. And I talk about this all the time. I am very passionate about helping people figure out how to stimulate the clitoris accurately. So this video will definitely cover that if that's something you want to learn more about. So let's get into number one. And this one may sound familiar, but I want to emphasize that this can happen on your own or with a partner. So number one is foreplay with adequate clitoral stimulation at the right time. Foreplay with the right timing. When you are with your partner, or partners, you want to make sure that you're having foreplay for about 15 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes is typically what's recommended. You do not want to rush. There's actually a study, Canadian researchers asked 152 heterosexual couples how much time they engaged in foreplay versus how much they ideally wanted to engage in foreplay. Women said on average they wanted about 19 minutes, but 11 minutes was the usual for partnered sex. And for men, they wanted 19 minutes of it and they spent 8 minutes actually doing the foreplay. So let's definitely get those numbers up for warming up the oven. We'll take the cake out before it's baked. You want to think about it like this, okay? You want her arousal to be super peaked before you even touch the clitoris, because for women, anticipation is super duper important. Think pleasure mapping. I've been hearing about this a lot. So this is something you can do on your own and also with a partner. So when you're pleasure mapping, you're taking your time to touch your body on your own before you go straight on the clitoris, which might not be common. A lot of women just go straight to the clitoris, right? But really touching yourself, caressing yourself, maybe it's touching your chest area, touching your knees, the back of your knees, because a lot of people don't realize their erogenous zones might be a lot more sensitive than they thought, or they might not even know what their erogenous zones are. So take time to really give yourself a massage before touching yourself, and then you can use that pleasure map to teach your partner where you like to be touched. So I know it sounds simplistic, but it's true. And if you haven't tried it, give it a try. Look up pleasure mapping, give it a go. You deserve it. You can even add lubrication while you're touching yourself, like your nipples and whatnot. It doesn't have to just be for the genital area. And when you are with a partner with a vulva, keep in mind that if you are not sure if she's ready for that stimulation, wetness is not always going to be the indication of arousal. Sometimes you could be really wet and not be aroused, or you can be really aroused and not be wet. Pay attention to breathing changes. And a lot of the time, there'll be this tightening of the abdominal muscles. Number two, make sure you're in a comfy position and tense your muscles. Okay. So if you are on your own, make sure you're comfortable. Okay. Have a pillow behind your head. Maybe put a pillow under your butt. That can make it easier to get to the G. This is different from when you're exploring, because I've talked about varying the types of ways that you're laying when you're masturbating. But if you are just in the exploration phase, you want to make sure you're just doing it in the one position that's the most comfortable, maybe the one that mimics how you lay when you're having oral, if you're receiving oral, because that might feel more like similar to what if you're fantasizing about receiving oral. Be in that same position of like when you're thinking about that spicy time that you had, if that makes sense. Sometimes use your hands and sometimes use different toys. There's so many different ones to choose from. I love a bullet vibrator. I love a clit sucker. I love those ones that stimulate your G spot only, and then you can just use that and then use a vibrator like a bullet on the clitoris. I like to double them up, you know what I'm saying? Or there's even the ones that's all in one, like a rabbit, for example. There's so many different ones you could try, but there's ones like a rabbit where it goes inside, but then it has like a little rabbit that goes on your clit. Those ones are nice because it's like less work, less holding things, but it's okay to combine, and diversify. And here's one you might not expect. So research shows that when women tense their muscles, kind of think like a Kegel, kind of like you're holding in pee, this actually makes it easier to orgasm. And I remember reading about this in a Cosmopolitan magazine when I was very young, but it's actually true. When you are in that moment of like, arousal, and you feel like you might be close to that point where you want to come, really tense in your muscles because it stimulates the nerve endings within the muscles called proprioceptors. So, yes, Kegels while you're getting oral or while you're pleasing yourself can be really nice. The nerve stimulation, when you do that, is sent to the brain and it's interpreted as arousal, which brings you closer to orgasm. So, there's a lot of scientific and not anatomical reasons for why this works, but definitely give it a try. You can use your butt, your thighs, and your pelvis in order to kind of increase those tension points inside. Number 3. So this one you might not expect, and I will say research on this one is limited. However, abstaining from sex from a very short period of time can actually increase sensitivity. Let me explain. Frequent stimulation of the clitoris can lead to a somewhat of a desensitization. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say you're using a vibrator multiple times a day, every day. For a very short period of time, there might be some decreased sensitivity due to the nerve endings being kind of like worn out, overused type of thing. So you want to take a very, very small break because the desensitization is due to the nerves firing repeatedly. So waiting can build intensity, but not for too long. There's something called clitoral atrophy. So if you go too long without any type of stimulation, you can actually lose your ability to experience pleasure, which we do not want. And clitoral atrophy also happens in medical situations or menopause from a lack of estrogen due to years of low arousal and low blood flow to that area. We do not want this. I'm talking about, like, you're going to get laid in a few days, so you take a break. And how long to wait? Of course, it's not a one size fits all. Maybe a week, but you don't need to. It's not like a semen retention thing. I've talked about this before. Some men, if they want to get someone pregnant, they can actually wait a little bit before they bust, because, like, if you wait for a few days and then you bust again, you're more likely to have more high quality sperm. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about taking advantage of that nerve stimulation, taking advantage of not getting desensitized. So maybe think like 24 to 72 hours before you're going to get laid, because it also builds excitement and anticipation as well, and makes your nerve endings more like, ooh. Think about it like this. Like, let's say your birthday dinner is coming up and you haven't had lobster in a while, but you love lobster. Don't have shellfish for a few days, because then you maybe enjoy it more. Or you're going to have chocolate cake. So maybe don't have chocolate for a few days, because you know how it's like more enjoyable. It's more enjoyable when you haven't had it for a while. You know what I'm talking about. You know. It's also a similar thing when you think about dopamine, right? Let's say you haven't had anything processed for a while, no restaurant food, that type of thing, that, like, those things that really spike your dopamine like crazy, or fast food. All of a sudden, a Honeycrisp apple tastes like $1,000,000. It makes my taste buds go wild. But if I've just had like a weekend of eating restaurant food, maybe not so much. I'm actually going to make another video on this next week, so stay tuned for that, because I'm really interested in this idea of taking a little break and how it can intensify your pleasure, because it's not something I've really thought about before, but I can definitely relate to this, if you know what I'm saying. Just that anticipation and letting your nerve endings rest. So if you like this kind of content, make sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, turn on bell notifications. I will be posting every Sunday Ask the Clitician videos, Sonya Maya Psychology. Make sure to comment below if you have any feedback on these videos. You can subscribe to my fan pal to make topic requests, or if you put a request in the comments that I find very interesting, maybe I'll do that one. Maybe you don't have to be a fan pal, but it's a really great way to support me as a content creator. And yeah, check out my video next week on how it can increase sensitivity to wait a little bit longer, not too long, but a little bit longer. Take a little bit of break. Make pleasurable decisions and decisions because you deserve it.